Have a play date with your body as I talk with Joseph Simons, dancer, choreographer, performer and co-creator of the highly acclaimed and must-see Fringe World show, The History of Dance as told by one man in 60 minutes with an energetic group finale. Exactly. Joseph talks about growing up in a highly artistic family and how the draw to attend the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts, WAAPA, first brought him to WA. He then goes on to tell the story behind the creation of the History of Dance solo show, which so beautifully spans so many facets of all things dance, and how it has developed to the place it is now. The conversation doesn't end there. We then explore the life of a dancer and how Joseph's body is his instrument as an artist. We talk about his relationship with his body, functionality versus aesthetics, and the benefits of exploration of movement. Joseph is wonderfully engaging, and his energy and humour shine through the conversation. By listening to this, you will come to realise that dance is for everyone, and there's no better place to start than in your bedroom with only your radio as company. So enjoy Joseph. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards, the world of dance. Well, 100 years of the history of dance is where we're going to today with my guest, Joseph Simons.
Hi,
Joseph, welcome
good
to the
morning.
show.
Hi, Joseph Simons even.
Simons, sorry.
No, that's
shocking.
fine. No, Simons, Simons.
That's shocking. Right.
You know what is interesting though,
What?
is that my sister Jessica Simons married Trent Simmons,
Right.
and so her name went from Simons to Simmons over the course of a wedding, and of course that was the joke of the year.
Indeed.
Yeah, great
Indeed.
fun.
So one of the things I like to ask my guests right at the start, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me.
Hi,
Because I know
thank
you're
you.
super busy
Thank
in
you for-
between Fringe and everything.
Thank you for
else.
having me. Yes, we are in season.
In season. So one of the, like I said, one of the questions I like to ask my guests right at the start is their relationship with Western Australia.
Right.
Because you're not originally from WA.
I'm not originally from WA, but I know it well and I love it very much.
Why is that?
Okay, so I grew up in Dubbo,
Yep.
New South Wales. I would say a little country town. They call themselves a city. And I grew up in Dubbo until the age of 18. And I always had my mind on the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts, known as WAAPA. And when I say I always was aware of it, I think I was aware of it from sort of, 13, 14-year-old, where a girl at my dance school, I went to Dubbo Ballet Studio, and there was a girl who was one of the seniors called Emma Canalisi, and she went to WAAPA to train in dance. And I was like, what's that? And, eventually sort of did some reading and all of that. This is the sort of the very early, late 90s, early noughties. And, I was looking at magazines, lots of Dance Australia magazines that seemed to mention WAAPA a lot. And so I was like, okay, that seems like an interesting place. And so when I finished high school, I was fortunate enough to get into the WAAPA dance course, and so headed straight over to Perth to follow in Emma Canalisi's footsteps.
Yeah.
And interestingly, of course, Emma Canalisi and I have now become very close friends and collaborators, and we have this WAAPA connection.
Yes.
So I moved to Perth in 2006, the beginning of 2006, and began a 3-year course here in dance at WAAPA, which I just loved, absolutely, adored that, and really sort of was just milking the course because I was discovering all of this stuff about dance that I didn't know. I knew that I liked dance and knew that I enjoyed dancing, but yeah, Perth sort of opened all of that to me. I then, after the 3-year course, stuck around in Perth for a few more years, performing with West Australian Ballet. So I am delighted now. I haven't been back to Perth for quite some time, and I'm delighted now to be able to bring mine and Emma's show back to Perth, back for Perth audiences, and being back in this fabulous, sunny, and currently very hot state.
Yes. What is it about Perth that you enjoy? Obviously, you were drawn by WAAPA.
I was drawn to Perth because of WAAPA,
Yeah.
not because I wanted to move to Perth.
Yes.
But I very quickly discovered. I mean, you have to imagine that for me, I'd spent 18 years in one small town.
Yes.
And our closest major capital is Sydney, and you know, I know I love Sydney for its different reasons, but Perth for me is now in my memory. It's my first independent home. It's the city where I turned 19 and I was living away from my parents and studying and all of that. And so
Yes.
Perth holds a very special memory for me in terms of the place where I sort of grew up and the place where I sort of grew into the much more the person that I am now with regards to my training and my network and contacts and friendship circles. Perth is really the beginning of a lot of that. And then of course, you know, why do I love Perth? Well, I love the weather and I love the beaches.
Yes.
It's a beautiful city. I love it very much. I've lived in, you know, Mount Lawley, close to the campus. I've lived in Freo as well, and I just find this city really attractive and fun and full of really interesting people, as I'm sure you've discovered over this podcast.
Indeed. So you're a dancer, performer, choreographer,
Director, writer,
ballet, opera, toured the world, Olympics, fashion.
Yes, there's
the
quite a
whole
lot.
thing, you know, I was looking at the bio, I was like, oh my God, I'd spend half the podcast just reading it out.
Well, yes.
Where does all this come from?
Oh, it's exhausting
in the
just
Joseph
thinking about it.
story? Like, a little boy in Dubbo.
Yes.
Where did it all come from?
So, okay, well, I guess it all really comes from... so my mother, Sharon Simons, who's an incredible woman, she was a musician, and her mother, my grandmother before that, was an incredible piano player. So Nan Dawn Whiteley, who very interestingly passed away about 3 days ago. Oh. So we're in a current state of sort of really remembering her and her life. She was an incredible piano player who played a lot for the sort of wartime dancers around regional New South Wales and all of that. Her daughter, my mum, Sharon, is also a magnificent piano player, taught by her mum. And Sharon became a bit of a local pop star, I'm going to sort of mildly say. She had an album, a record, of course,
yes,
in the 70s, and you know, she had a song that like got to number 3 on the chart, you know, all of those things. And so she's always been really musical and all of that. And that has naturally sort of turned her towards amateur theatre and that sort of thing. But when I came along, and I'm the youngest of 3, I have 2 older sisters, and we all discovered that we were all quite strong singers from a long line of sort of musical talent. And so by the time I was about... I would have been about 4 when my mum put together the Simons Trio, which is myself and my 2 sisters, and we would sing, songs, full 3-part harmony at age 4. It's sort of somewhere between like the Von Trapp family and the Partridge family,
right,
I would say, and that we used to travel around New South Wales performing at functions and events and that sort of thing. We had major cute factor because we were all from the ages of 4 to 8, and so we did that for a couple of years with my mum Sharon playing the piano behind us, and we were singing all these cute songs and people loved us. That was my first step into the stage.
Yes.
And
did you love it?
Oh boy, did I love it! I enjoyed attention. I think I enjoyed the art of standing on stage and having people watch something that you'd worked on. Yes. I liked that. So, by the time I was in school, which, by the way, I did one of those sort of personality tests that they do at the beginning of kindergarten for school, and they sort of, work out what kind of kid you are. I believe my report said overconfident, which really does, that describes a lot. So I went to school and, just loved being sort of theatrical and over the top. And very quickly, my parents decided to put all three of us children into dance class.
Right.
I took to it like Dr. Water, and eventually my two sisters sort of dropped out of dance over a couple of years. I just never did. And so coming to, then dancing right through my teen years, jazz, ballet, tap, contemporary dance. By the time I was 18, was completely sure that being on stage was the right thing for me. But I had all these other interests other than dance. So dancing was always, my first sort of training in being on stage and being comfortable on stage, as well as singing, obviously, with the Simons Trio, and those things as well. I was really interested in acting. I was fascinated with, behind the scenes stuff in both theatre and film and all of that. So, and then coming to WAAPA, which is a performing arts academy, where there is just people of all kinds of genres all around you. There's a stage management course, there's a musical theatre course, acting, of course, design and music and all of that. And so having friends and colleagues around me studying those things as well, I just learnt so much more than just my course, because I was dipping into, what are you guys working on? What are you doing? All the time. And so what came out of, graduating WAAPA was just a really well-rounded interest in a whole lot of different art forms. And I've been extremely fortunate to dip into all sorts of different things. And, fashion came along a little later, because as we know, dance is a really visual form. And so by the time social media and Instagram really was taking off, I managed to ride that in an interesting way, because dance photography is very popular, and a lot of people find it really interesting. And so, working with different photographers and having a lot of different images, being shot all over the world, because I often would do photo shoots while on tour with different photographers. So a lot in New York and LA and London. And so those photos allowed me to gain a bit of a following for different fashion designers and different things, who would invite me to come and do a photo shoot for a campaign or whatever, because they thought that it would be interesting to have a dancer in their fashion campaign. And the first of these was Tony Manichewski, who's an incredible Australian fashion designer, who contacted me literally via Instagram.
Oh, wow.
Just sort of saying, hey, I like your photos. I'm thinking of having a male dancer in my next shoot. Tony Manichewski mostly does a lot of really high-end women's fashion, a lot of gowns and dresses. And so he had the idea for having a male dancer in his in one of his sort of campaigns. And so I came and worked with him and discovered a really interesting collaborative spirit between the two of us. And eventually I was soon art directing some of his work, so being behind the camera and starting to work in those things as well, which was always part of my interest as well, because on top of arts, I love bossing people around, and so directing and choreographing and creating.
So you like creating things that get attention and bossing people around.
Yeah. And so the arts is perfect for me.
It is. It is your natural home.
Yeah, because I I now, in the last more recent years, are able to really transition into being on the other side of the desk, a little bit more creative team. So being either a director, choreographer, or both, helping work out design of things. All of that is of particular interest to me nowadays. And so, I've been able to work through being on stage and being that attention seeker, and now eventually starting to turn that round to creating work that sometimes I'm involved in a performance capacity, and sometimes I'm not, and I love both of them.
Awesome. So if we look at the show that you've brought here.
Yes, 100 years of the history of dance, as told by one man in 60 minutes, with an energetic group finale.
That is the best title ever.
It's a lengthy title.
But
you know what? It does what it says on the can.
It does, because I could say, can you give me a quick overview of it? And you kind of already have done. With
the title kind of really captures it. Except to say, the title is sort of, I'm really proud of that title, because it's kind of wonderfully deceiving. It's exactly what it says on the can.
It is.
Although it is also, the second that the show begins, we start diverting away from this concept of the what the title is describing. It's about a 17-year-old schoolboy named Jacob, who is obsessed with dance, and he is doing an oral presentation. He's been charged to do a 1-hour oral presentation on the subject of his choice. He has chosen to do a century of dance and the most influential choreographers of the last 100 years. And he tells us their story while demonstrating their signature moves. So this show started about 2 years ago, 2017, when I was really fortunate to have again, Instagram. I got an email from
Instagram is
a man.
used for good.
It really, in my instance, it really has. So I got an email from a man saying, "Hello, I've found you on social media and been sort of looking at your website and all of those things. Would you be interested in making a show in New York?" So this came out of, in 2013, I won the Tanya Lika Fellowship, which is given to one Australian choreographer every 2 years, to travel to Berlin to do a residency there at other studios in Berlin. I had won that fellowship, which was rather incredible, and went to Berlin, and I made my first solo show there. It was called First Things First, and I made that show. I toured it around Australia. It also did a little bit of international touring, and this was the show that this man had sort of discovered. So he contacted me saying, First Things First looked amazing and interesting. To be honest, he asked, how much did it cost to make that? And I was like, oh, well, that's really hard to describe, because, I had a fellowship for a residency in Berlin, and I can't really describe it. And he's like, okay, how much would you need to make another solo show? And so I was like, well, that's an impossible question, and $9 million.
Yes,
so it was hard to talk about that. And of course I didn't take him seriously when he first contacted me. So I was like, okay, let's have a Skype, please. Man, who I don't know, who lives in America, and let's talk about this. And he's like, absolutely. Just to let you know, I'm completely serious, and I'd like to, help the creation of a new show if I can. So we had a chat, a Skype meeting. His name is Martin, and he and I instantly had this incredible connection, which, I love Stephen Sondheim and all of his musicals and theatre, and Martin was like, oh yes, Stephen's a good friend. And I was like, I'm sorry. Okay. And he's like, oh yeah,
He knew how to push a button.
He said, I gave Stephen a theatre for his 70th birthday. And I went, oh, hang on, I'm sorry. Are we talking about the Stephen Sondheim Theatre on Broadway? And he's like, yes. We had it remodeled and named after him for his birthday. I'm like, oh, you're a big player. I understand. And so that
you must have been railing it
that changed the angle of the conversation when he was like, look, I put money into different shows and different, some shows that make it to Broadway and some that don't, but that's what I do. And he's a financial man. No talent in the arts industry, but enormous amount of interest and philanthropic personality. And so so once we realized that we were serious about this, then we decided to start talking about the creation of a new show. He asked me to pitch 3 ideas for a new show. One of them was a schoolboy giving the history of dance as a presentation. And he said, yep, that sounds like the one. That sounds like the kind of show that needs to be made in New York, because you can use the Lincoln Center Library. You could interview actual people who are connected to the choreographers that you want to talk to, etc. I also had the advantage of my good friend Emma Canalisi, the girl who went to WAAPA before I did, who had been living in New York. So I went to New York, I met up with Emma and said, here's the idea for the show. Will you help me? And Emma and I co-wrote this script together. She's also the director of the show. I became the performer of the solo work. And we started creating Jacob, and we started researching an enormous amount of fascinating dance history that, even though both of us were university trained dancers, a lot of stories that we didn't know, and some really exciting stuff that really got us going. And so we're cramming it into the script, and we did a development in New York to a select group of audience members who really loved it and thought that it had potential and was able to give a lot of great feedback. We then did the same thing in London, where we did a script development there. And we also did a script development in Brisbane, which is where I'm now based, for a select group of audience members. And that brought the script to where it is now. We did a national tour in 2019, around the mostly a regional tour, just to sort of get it on its feet and really see where it's finding. And now we're here in Perth, and it's a real show, and it's official, and I am so very proud of it.
It's an incredible opportunity to actually, as I listen to you, actually deep dive into all the history of dance, to actually almost certainly having listened to you before about what the arts means to you, but then to have the opportunity to deep dive into it, speak to all the people, read all the books, do all the research, just to put. I mean, I went to see the preview performance on Monday, and it's like Wikipedia on steroids in front of your eyes.
Absolutely.
Emotion.
I'm glad you've said emotion, because it's interesting. The very first draft of the script was like Wikipedia on stage.
Yes.
Meaning the dullest form of things, like, and then they did this, and then they did and on this date they did, like, it was so dull.
But I can see how you'd have to start with that.
Absolutely, that's exactly. And
then refine, and then put the humour in, and
absolutely,
and, stuff. And it was just amazing. It just covered. I feel like I really know about dance now.
Well, and that's
as well as being thoroughly entertained. I took my parents along, and they're still talking about it.
Very, very special. I think that that seems to be the overriding sentiment
Yeah.
from audience members. Firstly, that I didn't know what to expect,
Mm.
but now that I've seen
Although
it,
the title did tell you.
although the title did, you know, describe a certain amount of detail, but the overriding sentiment is certainly, I didn't even know much about dance, or even I didn't like dance, but wow, hasn't it been an interesting, you know, bunch of people who have shaped and changed choreography over time, and they find it genuinely interesting. The thing that I love about that is that, for me, of course, this is a play about dance, but actually, this is not a play about dance. This is about being 17.
Yes.
It's about being obsessed with something, and it's about what you're going to do with your life and legacy.
That too. Yes.
Because and it's exactly why I wanted to make a character who was 17. I mean, as we talked about, I finished high school and moved to Perth to train in WAAPA, and Jacob, the character, is, you know, in his final year of school. He is contemplating what's next. You know, 17 is this, you know, knife edge moment in everyone's life where you're about to finish, you know, school, the thing that you've been doing basically your whole life up until that point. And what you're going to do next is completely up to you. You know, and so for Jacob, these heroes of he's so obsessed with dance, and he certainly knows an enormous amount about them, about these influential choreographers, way more than I knew at 17. He's a very sophisticated young man. But he knows all about these heroes, and he can describe their lives in hindsight to a T. What he can't do is talk about himself. And what he's going to do next, because the unknown from his side, he hasn't done any of it yet. He can talk about the fabulousness of people who have, you know, Bob Fosse, who's created this enormous body of work and is so loved, and even well after his death is still a household name. You know, that's what Jacob wants, but he can't work out how to do that from age 17.
Yes.
And so this
and there's
play,
flickers of that at the end of the show, isn't there?
Absolutely. And so the writing of this play for both myself and Emma was about, you can study your heroes all you like, but it doesn't make your own path any clearer. And so that is actually what the play is about. And I think that people actually are grabbing onto that, on top of just all of the fascinating facts from the dance world. But I think people can relate to that. And the dancing itself. Yes.
Which is, wow, to watch.
Well, thank you. I'm trained. But I think that, I mean, the other obvious part of this show is that I'm a bit of a fiend for a lot of different styles of dance, and so my body is able to transform genre, era, style with quite a bit of ease. And so creating a show which allowed, as a vehicle to show off that, from doing, you know, a 1920s Martha Graham, you know, a contemporary dance, right through to, you know, a Paula Abdul music video, or a Rudolf Nureyev classical ballet variation. Able to throw that all into one show was a pretty exciting
it's a nice show off for you as well, isn't it?
It is a show off for me. And what's now become a part of that is now finding other cast members who can do that. And for this Perth season, we have been very fortunate to find two incredible new young Australian performers, Trent Sinclair and Andrew Longo, who have just in the last few weeks learnt the show and will be performing it with me on alternating nights throughout this season. That is the beginning of the show having a much bigger life.
And legacy itself.
And for me to be able to not have to be the only person in the world who knows this show. Because if I can't do a show, if injury or illness or whatever, the show has to be cancelled. If I'm the only person who can do it, so it became a matter of finding some other Jacobs, and these two young men.
What was it like
fantastic.
handing Jacob over?
It was a very interesting experience.
Yes.
It's not something that I've done before. It was the first time that I've done anything like that.
Because you must have been quite particular. I mean, you've developed.
Yeah, I mean,
Jacob.
yes, it was written by me. It was made for me. It was made on me. Yeah.
How much of Jacob is Joseph, and how much of Joseph is Jacob?
I don't think that you can write. I don't think anyone can write a character that doesn't have some of themselves in it. I would like to think that there's not a lot of Jacob in me. I don't think that's true.
You're smirking as you say that.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, Jacob does not have the knowledge that I had at 17.
Right.
He is certainly way more sexually mature than I was at 17, or at least sexually aware. Jacob is very much a 17-year-old in 2020.
Yes.
More than when I was 17 in 2004-5.
Yes.
We're on the other side of marriage equality and all of those things. And so coming out and sexuality and all of those things. I think that perhaps there is an element of me creating Jacob as the Joseph that I wished was 17 in perhaps some way. So there is certainly an element of Joseph in the character of Jacob, but coming back to teaching this to other young men and to other actors, it's been fantastic to see that they are creating their own Jacob from the text that's in front of them. So while I wrote it with me in mind, they're taking the text from their own experiences in their own world. And we do have now, with myself included, 3 very different Jacobs.
Right.
They of course say the same things and they do the same dances, and it's the same show. But Trent Sinclair has created this enormously endearing, sweet Jacob who's just so charming and delightful. Andrew Longo has created this sassy, witty Jacob who can then just flick round and break your heart. And so I have actually really relished the opportunity to step back, to teach them the show, of course, but to then allow them to interpret it the way that they do. And we were lucky enough to have Emma Canalisi, the director, come to Australia to work with the boys for a week in the middle of her busy schedule, to help bring out their version of who this young man is. And so I thought that it would be really hard, and I thought that I would hate it, seeing someone else do my work.
My thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we literally talk in the show about Martha Graham becoming extremely depressed and an alcoholic when other people were performing the works that she had choreographed on herself.
Yes.
Because Martha was, very similar to me, made a lot of solo work for herself. And so when she got older and other dancers started doing it, that really threw her into a depression. I was prepared for that. Like, I was prepared to actually find it quite difficult to see other people doing my work and sort of spend the whole time sort of squirming in the corner going, that's not how you do it. No, that's not right. I hate that. No, don't do it like me. But actually, I surprised myself a little bit of how much I was like, no, that's not what I do, but that's great.
Yes.
And that's so cool. In fact, I might steal that for myself. Yeah, around the other way. And so, and the 3 of us have actually really enjoyed watching the other 2 Jacobs rehearse and perform, and work out what it is about them that's working and how we can incorporate that into our own performance, it's actually made the work so much more sophisticated than when it was just me.
I suppose it evolves it even further, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's really exciting and special, and that's what theatre can really do, and I love that.
One of the big things that comes across when you do watch it is it's such a physical performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's you on your own on the stage.
Oh, it's a monster of a
obviously
show.
for 60 minutes.
Yes,
with the energetic group finale, which I'm not going to say anything else because you've got to go and enjoy it.
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise and it's fantastic.
It's the thing that gets most people when they hear the title. They go, "But how do you do an energetic group finale in a one-man show?" And well, let me tell you.
We're not going to say anything because you've got to go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Needless to say.
Yes, that's right. Let me show you is a better thing to say.
Needless to say, I've been enjoying it since. One of the things I'd like to ask you about is just the whole physicality of being a performer and a dancer. And, you know, we see the polished end of hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yes,
and hours
years and years and years.
Years and years and years. Hours and hours and hours.
Yes.
What does a day in the life of a dancer look like? What do you do to look after yourself? You know, I've sat down and spoke to people who have, you know, swam amazing distances or done amazing physical feats.
Right.
And I myself have done a few things in my time, but you know, just, you know, I've recently started to shift exercise to more movement focused.
Right. Yes.
And so I started to, in my own little way, appreciate how you were moving, and just the shape and structure of your body and your muscle work.
Yes.
Your legs, I was like, far out. And I was,
oh yeah, these legs have worked hard for me.
Yeah, but what is part of the daily routine? I mean, you know, to a degree, your body is your main instrument.
Very much so, and that's actually the key. That you know, a musician is able to put down their trumpet and walk away.
Yeah.
There's no maintenance required on that trumpet other than,
or
you
you
know,
can hand your guitar to someone to tune it for you.
Absolutely. So, whereas with a dancer and a performer of any kind, actor included, you live in your instrument, and so everything that you do will have an effect to how you look or how you're able to use the instrument when it comes to crunch time on stage.
Yes. And that will go from sleep, food, exercise, recovery.
Absolutely. Grooming, all of that comes into play. And so, you know, I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, but you really have to be on top of haircuts and what you've got coming up, because, you know, you need a certain length for a certain time. Like, all of these things come into play. So, yes, you're quite right, and I'm really pleased actually that you mentioned your transition from exercise into movement-based work, because that is really what dancers specifically, that's the world that they know. So I lecture in tertiary institutions often now, both in Brisbane and around Australia, and working with tertiary students, often in like the musical theatre world, is that I'm coming across performers who have not had dance training since the age of 6. They started dancing much later. Yeah, they weren't part of the Simon's trio. They have been a singer all their lives or whatever, and they've decided to do musical theatre, and so they've decided at the age of 18 or so to start picking up dance, and they're finding it quite tricky. Even more than that, they're frustrated at their bodies for not being able to pick up things as easily as they could, and often, and particularly the men, talk about that they're disappointed with their physique because they want that dancer's body. So I was really fortunate, and anyone who starts dancing from an early age is really fortunate, to go through puberty while dancing. Because what that means is, certainly from both a strength and a visual perspective, your body grows through that pubescent stage, already working a certain amount of muscles and already creating this body intelligence and a sophisticated understanding of how the muscles work. And so by the time you get to the other side of puberty, you've got this sort of fully working, functioning machine that is that can kind of do anything. And this is the difference between exercise and movement, is that dancing is a full body experience that is extremely complicated and extremely sophisticated, much more than lifting a weight in the same direction over and over
again.
It's not about repetition. It's actually about variety. Yes. And so the muscles are constantly contracting, expanding, and twisting. Yes. With every dance move that you do. And so the body gets this quite intense physical intelligence, which, coming back to the show, has allowed me to create lots of different movement styles and all of that in one. So, I mean, a day in the life is always hard to describe, of course. Also, I'm 32 years old now. Yes, 32, still playing a 17-year-old character. I won't be able to do this for that much longer. But so I'm in my 30s now. I'm certainly not able to dance like I could when I was 19. Certainly 19, 20, when I was still at WAAPA, but also dancing with West Australian Ballet. That was definitely a peak physicality for me, and a peak body size, shape, look. But in order to maintain that, it's about maintenance. I mean, I now do a lot of teaching, and even when I'm teaching, I'm still trying to be as physical as possible and to continue to do the work with the students in order to keep me going. It's a huge amount of stretching to keep the body limber. And
probably more so now than when you were 19.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, when I was 19, I never warmed up or cooled down at all. I was just like, I can do it. Roll out of bed, high kick, big turn. Like we're on, and with no problem. Now I can probably. I say that I can't dance like I did when I was 19. I probably still can dance the way that I could when I was 19, but now there are consequences.
Right.
So now there's the next day when the lower back still feels pretty sore, or the legs need a little bit more time to warm themselves up. So I'm just starting now to discover the those consequences of the aging process and how the dancer's body moves through at different ages. And I completely appreciate 32 is not old, but I am certainly noticing differences from when I was in my early 20s. And so a conscious effort of food is always going to be part of that, and nutrition. Because of such an active lifestyle, I actually am a big sort of carb overloader, because there's a lot of burning going going on. And I also go to the gym. That is still something.
Ask if you did, because that is, like we just said, it's kind of repetitive.
It's absolutely repetitive, and I'm certainly not suggesting that there's a superior inferior thing there with regards to repetitive movement or variety exercise, because repetitive movement has its place. And and if you're looking to build muscle, or to bulk, or to even just to do some maintenance on a particular muscle group, the gym is great for that too. So I will oscillate between teaching and dance classes, being both a teacher and a student, or a participant in other dance classes, as well as going to the gym to do more of that classic weight training and stuff as well. So that's what gets you the body that you see on stage.
Yeah. How's your relationship with your body changed? Have you been through peaks of love and hate and like? And
yes. Naturally, I have had an oscillating relationship. I think that during my teen years, I really disliked my body, mainly because it couldn't do the stuff that I wanted to do yet.
Right. So it's more of a function thing than an aesthetic.
Yes. I
That I find so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I was a scrawny kid. You know, I was always very sort of petite. So on the other side of puberty, where muscle gain was starting to come about, I was delighted by that, because I always used to say that I looked like a skeleton just with sort of some skin pulled over it. Like I was really skinny and little. So I didn't love my body aesthetically then. Most of my frustration with my body was the functional. I can't do that yet. Also, you asked me how similar I am to Jacob. What I do have in common with Jacob is, if I can't do it perfectly first time, I don't want to do it at all.
Oh, right.
And so that became a bit of a barrier in dance class at age 15, where it's like, I just want to do that cool thing, and I don't want to work for months on it until I can get it. So that I obviously had to learn and had to work through, and know that things that with your body can happen over time and with patience.
Yes.
And with a lot of training. So now I think I understand much more the art of waiting for something and being able to gradually build a new skill and layering. In terms of aesthetic, I don't have I have a really good relationship with my body now, where I'm in the show, we performers would get down to underwear in 100 Years of the History of Dance. And so there's this little bit of like, oh, all right, getting down to the briefs in front of everyone now. So hope you're happy with yourself, Joe.
Like if you're not.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. But I mean, I surprise myself sometimes with just how little I even think about that.
Yes.
Where I'm just like, well, it's fine. I've been training, I've been eating, I've been going to the gym. Like, this is fine.
It's been quite a transition for myself, as like I said, moving towards more movement-focused exercise, which then just opens up so many new things and things you can play with and what have you. And in doing that, I've become myself just generally less. Not interested, but less concerned.
Less concentrated, perhaps.
Yeah, on the aesthetic of my body.
Absolutely.
And I love the functionality and the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I'm 45, and I found this 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it is something that comes with age, and I have actually noticed that, because I've worked with a range of different people, including dancers or people who are learning to dance much older than myself. So I've worked with a range of different people, and it is interesting. And I mean, I suppose this is just a bigger philosophical discussion about, in your 20s, you are concerned about looking hot.
Yes.
And you want to be.
There's all reasons for that.
Yeah, and you want to look great, and sort of coming into sexual maturity is certainly a part of that you want to feel sexy.
Yeah.
And I think the older that we get, and exactly what you just described, the older that we get, we become less focused on the visual and more just about the function of, like, actually I would like to be able to do this feat for me.
Yes.
Not because I want to look a certain
100%.
way, perhaps, but it's just like, actually, no, this would make me happy to be able to do this physical thing. Or I would like to still be able to do this physical thing that I could do back in the day. And so I want to get that back, or I want to maintain the ability to do that. And I think that's where I'm now myself starting to come in, where I'm like, look, I actually don't care what the body specifically looks like, as much as I care about what it can do.
Yes. And I suppose one of the questions I have in mind is, are there different types and styles of dancing that you can see yourself migrating towards as you get older.
Yes, and others that are perhaps dropping off a little bit.
For you?
Yes. For me, personally, I mean, ballet will always be an incredible foundation, and it's known to be sort of, one of the big bases of a lot of different styles of dance. Ballet, for me, will always be a part of my life in terms of able to do certain foundational things, but the spectacular ballet stuff, probably not forever.
Yeah.
The big jumps and the double tours and the the pirouettes and all of those things may not be around forever. I'm okay with that.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think
Have you reconciled that, or does it make, or are you Martha who's going to go into a downward spiral about it?
I mean, look, it's actually tricky to tell because right now I still can do those things.
Yes.
And so right now it's very easy for me to say, oh no, I think I'll be fine when it's gone. Look, maybe not. But I mean, I think that if we look at history in the theme of the play that we're talking about, if we look at history and choreographers and dancers, certainly contemporary dance seems to be a style of dance where people are able to do it for much longer.
Yeah.
I mean, Martha Graham was dancing right into her 70s. Obviously with variations, there are different things that you can and can't do as the body ages. But certainly, yeah, I would like to think that I'll still be able to move my body, hopefully, as much as I can when I'm older. Contemporary dance often lends itself to that. Sort of jazz, hip hop, style of dance is certainly far too explosive for an older body.
Joints and
and certain things, and probably we'll be doing less floor work over time. Getting down and up, obviously. Yes. As anyone knows, even the art of sitting can become difficult as that body ages. So getting up and down off the floor, I think, will be a thing. I'm fortunate right now that those things are still in play, and I will try to keep them for as long as I can. But I think that I think that it's inevitable that there will come a time that certain things just can't be done anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've had a good run. Yeah. I'm okay.
Do you see yourself mellowing into greyness with ballroom and tango?
Oh, look, I mean, maybe. I mean, I think actually I'm probably more likely to turn into like some sort of Tai Chi, kind of yoga guy, perhaps, which is more just sort of, strength and
yes,
those
mobility
things and mobility more than that. But I mean, who knows?
Yes.
I mean, look, I love moving my body. I don't think that will ever change. I have always been fascinated by the science of dance and the physiology of the muscles and the bones and how that all works. And
because there's a bit in the show where towards the end where you rattle off all the different
absolutely
movements of the body and
you've got abduction, adduction, contraction and extension. Don't forget rotation, dorsiflexion, plantarflexion, circumduction, pronation, protraction. Then there's inversion, supination and retraction. And they are all, sort of physio terms for the different movements that the body can go through. And as I just demonstrated in the show, we have a little poem to help pull that together.
Indeed. You've obviously been working with the show for some time.
Yes.
Is there a point where your natural creativity, which obviously surges through you, is now looking beyond the show to new things, and how as an artist do artists reconcile the fact that their creative urges might want to go in one direction, yet the thing that they're doing to put bread on the table has you in one place for a period of time.
Yes, I see. I think I understand what you're asking. That like just other projects and other pathways and angles.
Because of the very nature of what you do, it's creative, and creative will always create and will always move, grow, evolve, expand.
Yes.
Yet, the show or any piece that you create, will then, once it's done and now out and being repeated, has almost finished its growth period.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does.
How do you reconcile that?
I understand. I mean, like literally, as we're talking today. So I performed the show last night. I did 100 Years last night. I'm talking to you right now. I'm about to go and have a Skype meeting for a new script that I'm writing soon. In 2 weeks, when this show finishes, I've got a week's worth of writing retreat for a new musical that I'm writing with a different collaborator. I am a pitch that I've put forward for a new event is happening, and so I'm working towards that happening in June. There is always so much going on. So even when I'm on stage, there is plenty in the pipeline, and mostly because projects take a long time to get off the ground, and they take a long time to develop, and so you've kind of got to have 6 or 7 cylinders going at once in order to constantly be putting that output, because they all take different amounts of development time, and they all have different deadlines and different finishing points. And so right now, 100 Years of the History of Dance, as told by one man in 60 minutes with an energetic group finale, is still you're correct in that it's probably stopped its creative growing period. It's now a complete finished production, but its life will continue on, potentially without me, in that these new actors may end up touring the show themselves without me present, which is possible, and that's why, in fact, we have other cast members.
Yes.
So that the dream eventually is that I'll be creating work and theatrical productions and shows and sending them off.
Yes.
Rather than having to hold its hand right the way through.
Parent releasing things from the nest.
Exactly. So so myself and my husband, who happens to also be a producer, we're actually quite interested, myself and Adam, in becoming essentially like a 2-man production house, where we're able to create shows, send them out into the world, and instantly start creating the next show. So we're looking. I mean, look, I got about 40 ideas in my head right now. I've got 70 ideas in my notebook next to the bed. Like there is no reason for me to be stopping anytime soon. I've got so many ideas for different things that are going on. And 4 or 5 of them are actually on the path now of potentially becoming a completed project. And so, I mean, to answer the question, yes, History of Dance is in a stage now, but it will continue on in a different form. With or without
life
me.
To go
that's its life. That's
to go and entertain many
absolutely.
Many
That's the point, and we're just to be clear, I make work to be seen. Yeah. So I have no intention of this season in Perth being the last season of this show. I would love for it to run for a couple of years. I'd love for it to move around the world internationally. I'd love for it to be seen by a lot of people. I'm proud of the work. I'm happy with it. I think that it has some universal themes that a lot of people can touch on, and that's a show that I think could go further. And while that's happening, I'll make some more stuff.
Indeed. What's been your proudest moment?
Oh boy, in life in general. Oh look, I mean, getting married was pretty exceptional and pretty exciting, and as we know, the fight for marriage equality and stuff has been a painful and really difficult battle. Particularly here in Australia. And myself and Adam, who are both Australian boys, we really wanted to wait until marriage equality happened.
Rather than going somewhere else.
Exactly, yeah. We wanted to do it in our country.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty proud moment to have that, that we got married last year. In Dubbo, in my hometown. You know, it was very, very special. And so that was certainly a proud personal moment. In terms of a career highlight, I actually have to go back to Western Australia and my time in West Australian Ballet, where I was the lead in a new production of Pinocchio. Which was choreographed and created by the then artistic director Ivan Cavallari. To have a whole new ballet, which was, you know, a couple of million in budget and, you know, a big scale new show with me at the center of it, was actually pretty special. I was only 21 at the time, and it was really thrilling. And we performed here in Perth in Her Majesty's Theatre, His Majesty's Theatre. Oh, which one is it?
We know.
If I
know, I'd correct you.
At the Madge.
At the Madge, yeah.
Here. Oh, damn it! I can't believe I can't remember that. We performed here in Perth. I was so proud of that, and that was certainly the beginning of a big and exciting career that's been sort of 10 years or so since then, of just really exciting dance experiences, a lot of touring. I've been very fortunate to be taken all over the world, from the States through Asia and the UK, Europe, and of course around Australia, with a lot of different dance companies, and doing a lot of different kinds of work and kinds of shows, which has been great, from musical theatre to contemporary dance and obviously ballet. Being a dancer in opera is fascinating, because that's a whole other world and kettle of fish. It's I've got a lot of very proud moments, but I'm going to choose Pinocchio for now.
Funniest story?
Oh, my funniest story?
Yeah.
Oh, good God, Bryn. I don't know. I honestly can't even think of one. I mean, look, there's always plenty of stories about, ridiculously fast, quick costume changes and that kind of thing, where you end up, having to come on stage with half a costume on and half a wig sort of flapping off your head. I've got plenty of them. Look, it's theatre. There's always going to be ridiculous, crazy things. I mean, literally 2 nights ago, Trent Sinclair was on stage performing 100 Years of the History of Dance, and I was side stage. We realised that he wasn't wearing his tie, which was part of the costume.
Yes.
And he needs to be able to take off his tie and tie it around his waist to become a tail for the Cats scene, and the scene about Gillian Lynn and her choreographic sort of masterpiece of Cats. And so I had to very quietly, because I was side stage, open up our props suitcase and see if I could rummage around, find any sort of tie that I could, and then flick it onto the stage. I tried to hit his ankle so that he'd feel it, and let him know that there's a tie here for when you need it.
When you're ready.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time. That's how it works, and look, those things happen. Sometimes the audience notice, sometimes they don't, and that's all fine too.
Or that could be part of the show.
Of course.
Indeed. What have you learned about yourself through all this journey?
I think that I have learnt how much I love moving the body, how much I love other people discovering that they can move their body as well. I've adored being a choreographer and creating movement that I'm not doing myself, and seeing the joy of someone learning how to do a move and nailing it, and sort of getting to that stage where they're like, hey, I couldn't do this before and now I can.
Yep.
That is thrilling to me. And I have learned that that's actually not what the young, overconfident Joe was all about. He was about attention seeking for himself.
Yep.
I've learned that I have an even bigger passion for creating work that other people can take on for themselves. That's an interesting thing that I didn't think would happen, because I thought that it was all about me, and I thought it was about me becoming famous.
Yes.
And actually what makes me happy is just to be in a room, in a rehearsal room, making art with others.
Yes. Wow. Obviously we talked about, what you physically do
Yes.
to look after yourself.
Yes.
What do you do to keep yourself grounded through all of this?
Oh,
I'm sure it can get all quite heady.
Yes, no. Well, I've got a amazing partner who brings me down on the regular whenever I'm feeling too lofty. There's a quick that's not the truth, right? And it's like, oh, back down we go. No. He's actually incredibly supportive and encouraging.
Yes.
and amazing, of course.
Love has many faces.
Yes, of course it does. And one of them is reality checks.
Yes.
So no, I love that. I love
And
that
kick
about
up
him.
arses
Yes.
and things like that.
Yeah. No, I think that. I mean, what do I do to stay grounded? I think that I know the importance of downtime. And I mean, actually, almost. This could be an answer to what have I learnt about myself. I have learnt not to kick myself when my body needs rest. I've learnt to listen to my body more, and to understand that I don't have to be go all the time in order to put out lots of output. In fact, by having more equal rest time to work time, I can be more productive.
Yes.
I don't have to be, because I've been a freelancer my whole life.
Yes.
So
mentally you'll be thinking, go.
Obviously, and at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, and I'm still working and doing emails and doing all of those things, that's actually not that productive. No. I need to at some point give myself permission to rest, relax, recharge, and then I can be more productive. That is how I stay grounded, because my natural inclination is to burn out and to just go for everything at 24 hours a day. I stay grounded now by understanding that I don't have to get frustrated at myself when I feel that my body needs rest, to actually listen to it and give it the rest that it needs.
And the last question I ask my guests.
Oh, here it is.
Here it is.
All right.
Is, if you could take a little golden nugget of information and just upload it into the collective consciousness so everyone just got it, what would that be?
Wow. It's a lovely question. I wish you'd asked me earlier to prepare.
By the way, I never tell any of my guests. Right.
Great.
This is the question, and I'll just give you a little bit of think time here by telling you this, because I'm, gracious host and all.
Yeah, please.
I never tell my guests I'm going to ask them this. However, this is the last question of every podcast, so.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I'm going to stick with the theme that we've been talking about for the last hour. I think that the collective consciousness of our world needs to understand that you have to keep moving your body. That sounds so basic and so silly, but the brain works when the blood is flowing.
Yes.
And so you must. I believe that humans must stay active. Obviously, my career and occupation is an extreme version of that.
Yes.
But I really believe that movement plays an enormous connection to emotion and mood, and the amount of energy that you're able to put out comes from the amount of energy that you're able to generate here. And so I think just staying physical is a crucial part to being alive. And I guess that would be my advice, to keep the body moving. Go and do a dance class. It's way more fun than you might think.
It's because like I said, I've moved to more movement orientated exercise, and with that I've had to learn to use my body more, and I get these lovely frustrated moments where it's like, oh, why can't it just do the thing that I want it to? And then you have to build the new pathway, and you're constantly building new pathways in your head, and it's little, it now to me is little wonder that senior citizens start taking up dance, ballroom dance and something, because their brain physically needs to be making new pathways, neuroplasticity and all of that. And
absolutely. And I guess the real the main sort of motto of all of this, and actually this is probably a good tie-in for the podcast that we've just made, and particularly with the show 100 Years of the History of Dance, is that the bottom line is dance is for everyone. A lot of people think that there's actually no such thing as I can't dance. It's you don't have to be good. You don't have to look amazing. It doesn't even need to be aesthetic. Dance is about what it feels like more than what it looks like. And if you can walk, you can dance. And so I would encourage, and I often do encourage my students to make sure that you are still bedroom dancing, the way that you did when you were 14 and listening to the radio and dancing around your room, because everyone does that to a certain extent. I don't think that should be lost when you get older. I think everyone should still be enjoying the art. I recently heard someone call it a play date with your body, which I think is actually kind of adorable.
I love that.
That it's just like, hey, body, good to see you again. Do some moves.
Let's come out the mind and drop into the body.
It's a lovely it's a lovely sentiment, actually. Dance is for everyone, and everyone should just keep moving.
Excellent. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks,
today.
Bryn. I've loved it too.
How long is the 100 years on?
So 100 Years of the History of Dance, as told by one man in 60 minutes with an energetic group finale, runs from, it's currently running, and it finishes on February 16th. So we have, I believe we have about 12 more shows to go. And myself and the two other actors will be alternating the role of Jacob throughout those performances, and we just can't wait to show more Perth audiences. They've loved it so far, and I can't wait for more of them to see it.
And if somebody hears this podcast after that time, they can go to...
You can head to www.thehistoryofdanceshow.com and you
find out where it's on.
Find out where it's on next and read about it. You can see some videos and photos there as well. It's, if I do say so myself, it's a beautiful show, and I'm extremely proud of it. And
like I said, I went to see it on Monday, and I was just thrilled. It was just so many things.
I'm so delighted that you enjoyed it.
Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Bryn.
Thank you.